Hi, I'm Rachel Alday, and this is the Hospitality Breakroom, recorded weekly in our actual break room at the Abode Luxury Rentals offices in Park City, Utah. This season on the podcast, the founder and CEO of Inhaven, Ashley Ching, and her teammate Meaghan Meyers will be joining me for the 10 full episodes.
Our theme this season is certainty, served weekly with Inhaven. This is your inside look at how local property managers are setting new standards in vacation rentals. Each week, we unpack the real challenges behind the bed, bath, kitchen, and beyond, offering practical solutions, myth-busting truths, and tips from the field.
Whether you're a seasoned property manager, vendor, owner, or just curious about getting into the vacation rental space, this series shares the real-life tools and stories that bring more consistency to every stay. Powered by Abode Luxury Rentals in Inhaven, built for those who want to do things better.
Hi, and welcome back to the Hospitality Breakroom. And this season, we are in the middle of our series called Certainty, served weekly with Inhaven. So we have Ashley Ching and Meaghan Meyers, both from Inhaven, and we're going to be talking about what, Ashley?
We'll be talking about the history of hotels today and how that informs the future of vacation rentals.
I love this topic so much.
I'm
And
so
Ashley
excited.
That introduced me to it, and now I'm obsessively telling everyone about it. Okay. I literally am. I really, really am. Okay. But just so for all of our listeners, okay. Hospitality Breakroom, this is the podcast where we started filming and recording in the Abode Breakroom, but now we have a whole season dedicated to talking about all things linens and kitchen, bath, and bedroom and standards and our relationship with Inhaven and how they have really helped Abode and many other companies basically standardize kitchen, bedroom, and bath in vacation rentals. And so I think, I know that Ashley has done all of this work on studying the history of hotels and how hotels standardized and how that relates to the vacation rental industry. So that's what we're talking about.
So, I think what's really important kind of to set the stage is, we just are coming off of VR Nation and Verma Foundations, and you talk to these property managers who, are doing great things for the industry. And when you start to talk about like standards and professionalization, they sort of say like, well, that's the hotel industry. We're not the hotel industry. Or we really can't be like the hotel industry. Like almost like it's impossible to get to where the hotel industry is today, the vacation rental space, where you have, just more certainty as a guest when you're booking that stay. You know what you're going to get. You know what type of service you're going to get and the products like you have when you book a hotel. And so it's interesting. And I always remind them, if you go back 30 or 40 years ago, the hotel industry was very much in the same position that the vacation rental industry is today. And so let's go back. I'm going to take you guys back to 1970 or the 70s. And so in the 70s, there was two very important things happening from a technology perspective and a policy perspective. From a technology perspective, mass cars are being produced in mass distribution. So suddenly you could really afford a more economy level car. Like if you remember the Ford Taurus, the Toyota Camry, those were all the rage at the time. And so suddenly the average family could afford cars because of mass production. They weren't as expensive to make. And so from a technology perspective, this was a huge advancement. From a policy perspective, at the same time, the US government was really investing in the build out of the US highway system. So suddenly people could afford cars and now they can afford to travel and they can travel long distances. And this combination of technology advances and policy advances, it allowed for these hotels and motels to start popping up along the highway system. But it led to a lot of challenges from a guest perspective. So if you remember checking into a hotel, you probably checked in with someone who was writing on a book your name. You probably walked in the room and you were greeted with a very colorful coverlet on a bed and some.
I remember with my family road trips, like we drove from Chicago to Sanibel Island, Florida. I think we did it 3 different times. And I specifically do remember like hotels where the duvet was not a duvet. It was like, the coverlet.
The waxy quilt thing.
Yeah. I mean, literally, there's a story where we checked into this hotel late at night and there were blood stains on the carpet and the shower. And I think I had to be like 9. That means my sisters were 7 and 6. So my parents had a 9-year-old, 7-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And I remember, like, I can still remember the carpet being bloody. And I remember trying to take a shower. Like, why did we even stay there? What's wrong with my parents?
Right.
I remember in the morning trying to take a shower and it was like the shower went every way out but down,
Oh
and
my
it had a
god.
shower curtain, and it was like blowing water everywhere,
That happened to me a lot. Yeah.
right?
But parents stood there because they pulled over and they probably saw like Ranch View Motel, and who the hell knows what goes on in Ranch View Motel? It was the place to stay. And so that's what, guests would complain. They're like, I have no idea what I'm walking into. I've never heard of this place before. I'm in a new place. And so they really face the same challenges as the vacation rental industry faces today. And so this all really changed in the 1990s, and really it was Westin launching the Heavenly Bed. You guys can imagine this white bed. They used to have them in the hotel lobbies of Westin's when I would check in. And what Westin at that point declared good sleep was a standard, no longer a luxury. And then they put standards around it. So they made sure that every Westin hotel bought to the same specs, the same pillows, the same comforters, the same mattresses to ensure that as a guest travels from one Westin to another, they had a very consistent sleep quality. And then this, eventually went into the bathroom and whatnot. And so those are where these standards really came into place. And it really helped professionalize the overall hotel industry. And guests suddenly knew, okay, if I book a Westin, I know I'm going to get a great night's sleep, and so booking confidence improved. So I guess, Rachel, I want to just start with you. How do you feel like the vacation rental quality standards have evolved over time? Because you've been in the industry for quite some time now. How have you seen those standards evolve?
I don't think they've gotten that far yet. And I think, some of the work that we've done, like with Abode through Inhaven, I do think we're starting to make some progress. But I think, like, even from back when I first joined the Park City Area Lodging Association, which was the first lodging association that we joined as a company, it's been around for 30 years. I remember I got on the board, I don't know, let's say it was 10 years ago or maybe 12, a long time ago, was the first time I got on that board. I remember being really naive, not having been on a board like in an industry organization in vacation rentals before. And I remember telling everyone, like, hey, what about, could we do standards? Could we, as a Park City Area Lodging Association, could we have, implement some sort of like a star system, ranking, rating system? And, maybe we could have some sort of standard so that people looking to book in Park City would know, like, oh, it's considered this level of stars by the lodging association. And I remember everyone just like laughing at me and being like, because some of the other vacation rental company owners in Park City had been in the business for 20 years longer than from when I got in. Some of them have been in for a really long time. And they were like, no, 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 that's impossible. Like, we could never, we've talked about this a million times. Like, it could never happen. And I remember being like, oh, okay, sorry. And I know we talked about this, Meaghan, when we were working on the Jackson Hole Lodging Association, like that kind of stuff. So it always comes up. And, now that I've joined the VRMA board, I feel like even, in that situation, I've had people that are members of VRMA say something like along the lines of, oh, what about some sort of, standardization? And so I think that it feels like it's so difficult with vacation rentals because you're not talking about a building that you control with boxes in a box, but you're controlling about, you're talking about controlling all these different fragmented individual properties that could be um, managed by one company. And even if you're talking about one location for that company, they could still be, within an hour radius or whatever. They're all owned by individual people. They were all built at different times with different, styles and different levels of finish. And so it becomes really hard to wrap your head around it. But I think, and I know you're going to get into this, Ashley, but I think this concept of being able to standardize through the bedroom, bathroom, and kitchen, I think is really, really interesting because it's like, oh, that would allow homeowners and property managers to allow for personalization and customization throughout most of the home, but to really have standardization in the areas that really affect your stay the most. And I think there could be, conversations on some variations on that theme, but I think it's such an interesting way that people haven't really gone about. Really, we've all talked about standardizing with some level of like luxury versus not luxury or price point or location or how many bedrooms or whatever, like how nice is it, which is very arbitrary. And I think this concept of standardizing through bedroom, bathroom, kitchen is like genius. So sorry that I just went way too far with that. Okay, go ahead.
Super important. And Meaghan, I know you're staying in a vacation rental today, in the background. So like, how do you think the vacation rental industry compares to the hotel industry with respect to standards? What are your thoughts here?
I really struggle staying in vacation rentals, actually, which I know both of you have multiple children. And so it's different, right? When it's just you and your partner. And my husband and I always stay in hotels because there is this massive amount of uncertainty that I have when checking into a vacation rental, which I hate being in this industry. And what I've found talking to other property managers over the last 10 years is I think that we can all agree that we want standards. Like, I've truly never talked to a property manager who said that they weren't interested in some type of standardization. Where we have struggled as an industry is agreeing on what those standards look like and how to approach homeowners with that. Like, I think that you talk to one property manager in Palm Springs who says, "Hey, we really want standards, but for us, this looks like blue sheets." And that just, we're sold on blue sheets. We absolutely love them. And I've really learned this being on the supplier side, talking to so many property managers as prospects and existing customers of Inhaven. And then you talk to someone in the Northeast who says, "Hey, we would absolutely love to have standards, but we want quilts and not duvet covers," right? Like, there's just such a disagreement about what those standards look like because we are fragmented and we don't have the luxury of owning our inventory. And I think this, like, collective want, but lack of understanding of how we get there has been the detriment to our industry for a really long time. And it feels like we're finally getting to this point where we have resources that we never had before, like the Inhavens of the world. And I don't know. I really want to be to a point where we have this certainty all around, no matter who you stay with, that I think is going to give us a better reputation in the industry. Because I think that truly, in terms of vacation rentals versus hotels and choosing where to stay as a family or as a group of friends, vacation rentals will lose because of the lack of certainty.
That's such a good segue to my next question to Rachel, which is, how when you think about your properties, Rachel, at Abode, the biggest competition you have is the local hotel. So when you think about what you're going to put into your properties or how you set your standards, how do you think about those as they relate to your biggest competitor, the hotels?
I mean, we always think about hotels. When we first started, that was some of our biggest conversations was like, okay, what kind of services can we offer to the guests of a vacation rental? Because what we know is that if they were staying, which usually they have been staying at the St. Regis, the Montage, the Stein Erickson, the Four Seasons in Jackson, this kind of stuff, the Sun Valley Lodge or whatever in Sun Valley, they've stayed at these certain types of hotels. And now what they want is they want to be able to have their whole family together. This is the most common scenario, right? Or their whole group if it's not a family. It's usually a family. And so it's like they want that access of common area, just them together. It's not like they have to leave their room and then they're going to be in the public. They want to be able to leave their bedrooms and come into a gathering area that's private. And so we knew we had to mimic or at least match, meet up to as much as we could what the hotels were offering because the hotel would have food and beverage, a hotel would have spa, a hotel would have maybe like if you're talking about a mountain location, like a ski locker room, that kind of stuff. So we worked really hard to have, really good relationships with private chefs so we could have dining brought to the home and taken care of. We worked on having, people bring yoga to the house or Pilates or whatever, all these kind of things, bringing in those services to the guest. But when it comes to us being able to mimic that standard of really like Inhaven has come up with Bed Bath and Kitchen, we weren't able to do that, right? So we knew we wanted good linens and good towels, and we knew we had to make sure the kitchens were well stocked and outfitted with all the equipment. But for us, we could mostly focus on service. And I think this is such a huge turning point because in vacation rentals, I think like Meaghan, what you said, where we struggle with standardization because it seems so hard. It's like I told you, people always told me it was impossible and we can't do standardization. It won't work. And I think the opinion of that came from trying to standardize vacation rentals, in this more service oriented price, like looking at price point kind of a way. And I think the really genius thing with Inhaven and the really like the big turning point for me in these conversations with Ashley like months ago, it's like, oh wait, what if we just get off that thing, this hamster wheel we've been on about price and star ratings based on how fancy or new or whatever it is? What if it's about standardizing that experience in the kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, and working from there? And it's like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Like I'm right now in a hotel. I'm in Costa Rica because I'm going to the Matt Landau retreat in Costa Rica, but today I'm in San Juan, but tomorrow we're going to some jungle location to talk about creativity. But we're at the best hotel we could find in San Juan. Sorry, not San Juan, San Jose, Costa Rica. It's the Intercontinental. And honestly, when we pulled up, I thought we were staying in a hotel in a mall because the hotel is right next to, kind of stuck onto a mall. But anyway, it's fine. We came in, but like this is not like other intercontinentals I've been to. And to be honest, we had lunch and I was like we had some sushi and it was and then we came to the room and the room was like no air conditioning was on when we got here, but it's hot here. We had to like turn on the air conditioning ourselves. It was damp in here. And I will say, like, I went into the bathroom, and this is for real, like this happened a half an hour ago. They have Byredo product in the Intercontinentals, Byredo.
Mm-hmm.
Byred. Okay, good. It's good stuff. And I was like, oh yeah. Okay, this is an Intercontinental. There's Byredo. Like it helped. I was like, okay. And like you can't see it unless I turn my computer, but there's an espresso right next to me. There's an espresso right here. So I'm like, there's an espresso. Like I'm feeling calmer.
Your
There's
certainty
Byredo.
is coming back.
Like is this carpet a little bit stained? Yeah, like a little, but like the bedding, I mean, I should show you. Like the bedding is pretty. It's decent. Is the room like a little bit not fully done the way I would like it? Like there's not that much art and stuff. Yeah, that's true. But we do have the good sheets, the good towels, the Byredo product. Now there's no kitchen, but there is an espresso. So I mean, I'm starting like just in my own experience to realize like how much you can really standardize someone's experience through those three components. And I think, that's kind of the genius of what we're going to be talking about. So yeah.
Yeah. So what's really interesting that happened also, if we look back at the history, so in the 1970s, 80s, when hotels would source products, they source products the way that most vacation rental professionals do today, is they go to Walmart, Sears, current day Amazon. And so when Marriott and Hyatt and Hilton and everyone launched these standards, they had to say, okay, property managers, you're going to hang our flag, but you need to buy these pillows to spec and this shampoo to spec. And so what they did is three brands, Marriott, Hyatt, and Accord, came together and they formed Avendra, which is a group purchasing organization. So they said, all right, here's our standards in a book and go purchase them here at wholesale. So they made it really easier, much easier to find to purchase into those specific specs through Avendra. And so, we actually were talking about this yesterday at the vacation rentals at VR Nation. What percentage of property managers do you think today source professional grade or commercial grade goods for their homes? Or are they just, really sourcing from retail like Amazon, Target, etc.?
20% maybe? What do you think?
I was
Meaghan?
going to say 20%,
Okay.
20 or 25%. I mean, it can't be. There are
We went years
20,000
without.
professional property managers, right?
Wait, 20,000? I did not know that. That's
Wait,
worldwide.
I think it's 28. I think you're right. No, just in the US, there's over 25,000
Whoa, I didn't know
Isn't that
that.
wild?
professional management companies. Yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
Well, and think of organizations like Verma, right? Where Verma International feels like such a big show.
Oh no, we're
Really
we're
have-
barely touching.
Right. There are
Yeah.
2,000 property management companies that go
That's
to
insane,
Verma
right?
out of, right. It's such a small segment. And of those, Ashley, I think you know this number, like the majority have less than 25 units. Is that correct?
It's, the majority are smaller,
Right.
smaller
Yeah.
players. But, it's sort of like saying, okay, in every other hospitality industry, if we think about restaurants or hotels or airlines, like they're not, if you're at a restaurant, you're not running out to Kroger to buy your meat, right? You have a professional, you have a professional supply chain solution. Meaghan, you know this more than anyone with the restaurant industry with Clark. You've got a relationship with Cisco Foods or some sort of professional procurement solution. If McDonald's is running out of hamburger, they're not going to, Costco to source their meat. It's very different. And so the vacation rental industry is really the last hospitality industry to sort of get on these professional supply chain solutions.
We
It's
invited
just-
our Cisco
great.
rep to our wedding.
Uh-uh.
Yes, it is very, I mean,
that.
to Ashley's point, like it is US Foods or Cisco, and that is where you get everything. And you have your rep on speed dial, and that's who you call, and they source everything for you. They get it to you. They know all the pricing, and it is like extremely professionalized.
Yeah. Well, and just think, like we always talk about how, vacation rental, the industry is like there's so many parts and pieces. It's such a maze in this job. It's not like you're so focused on one thing. You have all these things you have to be an expert at. And think of that. Like here we are, all of us out here being procurement specialists. Like for years, I literally drove and purchased product myself. Like whether it was Costco or wherever, I would go and get all the candy. Like we leave food for every arrival, like treats, and I would go purchase it like myself. Like I'm sure 80% of companies are doing that. And that's so inefficient. Like it's an inefficient use of time and money. It's crazy. And you're not getting the best product because you don't have access to it at your local store because most of us are in resort markets. We're not in, you know, major metropolitan areas where they have, even access to going to a store that's commercial.
Mhm.
Right.
Crazy. Yeah.
Right. I know. It's such a waste of time for everyone to try to become a hospitality expert. When I was starting in Haven and talking to professionals about how they source, they're like, I am not an expert in bedding or in linens. I am an expert at guest experience and everything. I have no idea what to stock in my places, and I know that what works in my own home doesn't work in a professional setting. So I think everyone's not alone. So what's really interesting, if we look back to the 1970s, where you had these huge changes in technology and in policy, which led to just hotel challenges. Similarly, today in the vacation rental industry, we've got massive changes in technology and policy. So, from a technology perspective, it has never been easier to list or to find a vacation rental through the launch of Airbnb or Vrbo or Booking.com. And from a policy perspective, with COVID and work from home, you know, the people are able to go and work from places outside of the office more than ever. And so the demand for vacation rentals is, obviously vacation rentals was a very attractive asset right now. And at the same time, now it's leading to a lot of quality challenges. These guests want to stay in vacation rentals. They can stay in vacation rentals, but they just don't know what they're going to get when they walk into it. And to Megan's point, they book hotels over vacation rentals because there's just too much uncertainty.
So how do we make it better?
So that's why we partner with people like you, Rachel, like Abode, to say, all right, let's work together as a group to set these standards, and let's do it along a quality framework, because we know that not every vacation rental company is at Abode level. I mean, you guys are extreme luxury, but it's like, not every hotel is an Aman or a Ritz Carlton. You've got different qualities along this quality framework, from good, better, best, or like from going from the Best Western to a Marriott Courtyard to a Marriott and then to a Ritz Carlton. And then you really have to provide. So once you set these standards, this professional solution that Inhaven, has to offer. So, I think, Rachel, can you talk a little bit about, you talked a little about the board. Are you hearing from members at all today on just, how do we become more professional? What are you hearing on the Burma side of things?
I mean, I think, some of what Verma offers, and I'm somewhat new on the board, so I don't want to like overspeak. But it seems like to me, historically, what VRMA offers is more access. Well, and I can speak from, being a property manager and joining the organization too. And it's like when you become a member as a property manager, you do get access and knowledge of, just like, let's just say that you learn about all the vendors that are out there, which like for us, we never knew. We at Abode, Rob and I and our team, most of the software that's out there, most of the tools, these vendors, we had no idea. And honestly, how were we ever going to learn? Because it's like, how do they know that we exist? How do they know? It's really, really complicated. And when we went to VRMA, I mean, really, that's when we met Inhaven. So just that's one of just so many companies that we learned about through going to VRMA. So I do think VRMA, like the one of the main things that we offer as an organization to property managers who become members is that, through conferences and then through different like resources that we have online, you're able to learn about all of these vendors that are out there, whether it's for software, services, all different things that are going to help you run your business more professionally. And so there's like we always say, there's all these facets of how you can run your business more professionally, whether it's accounting, marketing, it could be whatever, distribution, all these things. But I do think that there's one area that's only become a focus more recently, which is all of the inventory and the stocking of your properties and your business inventory for the kitchen, bedroom, and bathroom. And the idea that you'd be able to source those items from commercially manufactured companies that are manufacturing for a commercial standard, giving you pricing based on these bulk orders, and able to work on sourcing for you if you need additional things. And then, the whole concept of like, can you get, plates where you can have like a chip guarantee, or you're able to replace like one mug at a time and not have to get the whole set, all that stuff. I think that kind of stuff is those are the kind of vendors, right, that you wouldn't know existed unless you had VRMA. So I think the vendor piece and learning about available resources is really big with VRMA. I do think the concept of standards comes up again and again, over and over, through whatever time cycle that we want to look at. And I do think that until now, it's been that same sort of conversation where it's like, yeah, that would be really great to have some sort of standardized program, but then the discussion goes further and further, and it seems more and more impossible the more the conversation happens.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you feel any different, Meaghan?
No, it's really interesting, like, organizations like VRMA and VR Nation and, just honestly, like, small groups of networking opportunities in the industry, what I've realized is so many of I say us, technically, I'm not an operator anymore, but I
You have a
still
history.
deserve Yeah. There is, like, a lot of what you do is in a vacuum, right? Like, you are in your day-to-day, you are inundated, you are talking to owners on the phone, like, it is such an in-depth business where it's very easy to get sucked in to your team and your homeowners and your guests, and what I have found is, like, when we finally have the opportunity to all get together at a Verma, everyone is like, "Oh my god, we're dealing with this problem and this problem and this problem," and it is the exact same problem that somebody on the other side of the country is dealing with, and I'll never forget all 3 of us were actually together a couple of years ago and did an exercise on standards, and everybody in the room, I don't know how many people were there, maybe like 50 to 75, there wasn't a single person who said that it wasn't a problem for their business or for our industry as a
Wait, it
whole
was
to have this lack
last
of
year
standards.
at Exec Summit, right? Wasn't it, Ashley? Wasn't that the room? Was that 2 years
What's
ago?
that? This is
Yeah,
When
when
you
it was a
we did the
we did like a whiteboard or a
postman on the board. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
Yeah.
exercise. We were all in Charlottesville together.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, yeah. Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, sorry. You're right.
Yeah,
It was
this
2 years.
is
Oh my god.
when I met Ashley, actually, and I remember we put everybody there was, what, 50, 75 of us. We all put on pieces of paper, like, what we would like to standardize, and that is when I realized, like, this is a collective issue across the industry. We all talk about it every single time we are together, and nobody in this room, other than Ashley at the time, could tell us, like, what we could do to solve it. And I think to your point, Rachel, so much of what we were all, like, kind of spinning around about was trying to standardize items that, like, don't ultimately matter in the overall experience and that allow us to keep this, like, uniqueness of our brands anyway. Like, that's what makes Abode special is that you use Ballerina Farm croissants when guests check in, and you put fresh flowers, like, I don't wanna take that away from you or try to make Tom and Missy do that, right, in Vermont.
I was just texting with Missy like an hour ago. Are you psychic? Okay, sorry.
That
Go
is
ahead.
wild.
Oh my gosh. And I have my note right now on my is Missy and Kelly. I need to
Wow, Missy, you're on all of our minds.
she's on my list. That's so funny. So I want to kind of transition to just the hotel structure because I think that we stay in hotels all the time, right? How many conferences do we go to a year? And I think very few people understand how hotels are structured. So when you walk into check into the Marriott or the Ritz-Carlton or your Intercontinental, Rachel, you are most likely not actually talking to a Marriott or not Intercontinental employee.
Right. I
That
don't think
blows
people
my
know that.
mind.
Right. So the brand is really the flag that's hung and they sort of determine the standards, but the owners of these hotels, these REITs or private equity or individual owners then try to choose the brand and then they select a property manager to manage those standards and to follow those, specs and whatnot. So what's really interesting is like Hilton Hotel as an example, they have, today over, 5,500 hotels in the US. And back in 2000, they physically owned 129 of those hotels. And today they own 0. So they don't own this real estate at all. So they're all owned by other people. And then they don't really manage the hotels either. So back in 2000, they managed about 264 hotels, and that's come down to 187. That's 187 of their properties out of the total 5,700 today, or 5,800 today.
That's
So
crazy.
they're really there to, be the flag on the building, and to, to sort of provide these sort of national brand standards. So as you move from one Hilton to another, but you really rely on that local property manager. It might be Boise property management, or, Chicago property management, to manage that hotel, because those are the local boots in the ground. They're the people that know the place, in and out. They know the events, they know the weather, they know the best restaurants, and they really can provide that best service for that guest. So I think it's really important just to understand how the hotels are structured, and it's very different than the vacation rental industry is today.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a fact that most people just do not know. And to be honest, I brought this up before. I have an ex-husband, and his family was actually in the company that they had was development. And so I learned a long time ago about this concept that like hotels are owned by like, there's someone that owns a hotel and then there's someone that manages a hotel. And also, to be honest, I never really saw the correlation in that between vacation rentals when Rob and I started our business and hotels. Like I always felt like it was so different the way that a property management company, vacation rental company manages houses versus how these companies that managed hotels in quotes. But, now it's Ashley, these conversations with you that have made me realize like, oh, okay, this is a really similar concept. There's hotels, there's someone that puts money to build that hotel. They own that building, right? That's their business, but they have a management company that runs and manages and takes care of the guests and books the reservations and arranges for the housekeeping and keeping up the standards and all of that. And that is their property management for that hotel. And then they have a brand. There's those three components. And I think with vacation rentals, I've only recently started to realize how similar that is. And the difference is we don't have the brand, right? So in vacation rentals, you have the person that built the house or bought the house, they own the house, they hire a vacation rental company. We manage it, we market it, we take care of it, we clean it, we book the guests, we take care of the guests. But what we don't have is a brand. And it's like, it's only now that this is all clicking for me. And maybe I am just not that smart. And this is a very high likelihood.
No, I
But
think that
I
most
also,
people don't know the
I,
structure.
well, and I also think that
Yeah.
most people in our industry and just how our industry came about, we aren't, because it hasn't become as professionalized as hotels have, and it's only just on that swing upward. That this concept of how similar these two industries are in terms of that management structure versus the homeowner, I think it's only just beginning to gel now. And I'm pretty sure that most company owners in our industry don't get that correlation and don't understand the ramifications of that and how that affects our ability or our lack of ability to standardize, you know? I don't know. Does that I mean, I don't mean to just totally reiterate what you already said, but I feel like it's really important to say it a few ways because I do think, like, the first time that you talked to me about this, Ashley, I didn't get it. It did take multiple conversations, and I'm actually remembering back because you guys are talking about the 100 collection when was the first time this was discussed, and I'm pretty sure that I had to be on a really important phone call, and Tootie was there with me, Tootie from my team, and I
Yeah.
think I had to go outside, and I wasn't in the room for that part of the discussion, and Tootie was, and she was, like, talking to me after, like, "Oh my god, you missed the best part of this whole thing." But it wasn't until last year at Exec Summit when we did that meeting that this gelled for me, which is when I became obsessed with Ashley's presentation and her teaching on this correlation between standardization in hotels and vacation rentals. So, yeah, I'm just gonna keep reiterating the same thing over and over because I'm wondering if anyone's as, like, dense as I am, and maybe it's
No,
taking
no,
that
no one
I
knows
had
about
no
this.
idea.
No one
right.
knows about this. I think very few. I think you have to be, like, deeply in the hotel industry to really understand it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, so the question that I get asked is, well, who owns these hotels, right? If Hilton and Marriott don't own these hotels, who owns the hotels? And what's really interesting is that over 60% of the hotels are owned today by what they call the Asian American Hotel Owner Association, AHOA. And these are really Indian Americans that own, over 60% of these, around 50 to 60% of these hotels. And they've been, coming to the US and starting these hotels. And typically when you move over to the US from India and you want to buy a hotel, you'll start at the economy. You kind of have to prove yourself in the hotel industry to get new brands or to be able to hang certain flags. And so they'll start at the economy level. Their entire family will move into the hotel. The kids will be checking people in. The parents will be cleaning the rooms. Like, it really is a family operation. And as they kind of prove themselves, then they can get, to the higher chain scales. And so you'll find that, a lot more economy hotels, 66% are owned by people that are part of this association, the Asian American Association, Hotel Owner Association, versus 41% at the luxury.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's
That
just
is
really
so interesting.
I was going to ask you on the luxury side, Ashley, just to share with the listeners, like the Four Seasons of the world. Does this same logic apply to them, or the same model?
So yes and no. So when you look at the hotel brands like the Hiltons and the Marriotts, they do tend to operate more of the small percentage of hotels they are operating tend to be either the super luxury hotels or the very large conference centers that just have a lot more logistics involved. So you do see them owning. And then in the US, they own and manage a lot less. When you go internationally, as they go into new markets like the Philippines or Singapore, they'll go and they'll start by owning and operating those, or definitely managing those hotels, to make sure that they train the local staff on the brand standards. But as they become more mature in those markets, they start to pull out and rely on the local property management companies to manage those hotels.
Mhm. Okay. It is super interesting. Okay, so but now let's talk about, like, how well, or do you have more of the history to talk
Yeah.
about
So
here?
the
Okay.
other thing is just that, when we think about the who manages the hotels, these are really independent managers. Aimbridge is the largest property manager of hotels. So they are like the Vacasa of the hotel industry, but I don't think many people have ever heard of Aimbridge.
Right.
Right. They manage about 4% of the US hotels. And Highgate's the second largest. So these are people these are more of the national property management brands, but it's really, you don't go and say, I stayed at a Highgate hotel or I stayed at an Ambridge hotel. You say, I stayed in Marriott. So, that's been really interesting to sort of see. And over the history of hotel managers, really you see that management companies cannot manage more than 300 hotels. That's really where you see it kind of cap off. Outside of Highgate and Ambridge, most hotel property managers manage 300 or less.
Huh, okay.
Yeah.
That is
So that's
interesting.
been like interesting in the evolution. And then, really it's just kind of reiterating that there's very clear roles and responsibilities when it comes to the hotels. And it hasn't always been like this. This is how it's evolved over time. But you've got four key stakeholders and they all sort of have their own lanes, right? You have the distribution, which is the OTAs, so booking.com, hotels.com. That's one stakeholder. Then you have the brands, so the Hiltons, the Choice, the Marriotts. You have the brand level, and they're really responsible for marketing and their loyalty programs and the standards. And then you've got property managers that manage those hotel brands, and then the owners of the physical assets. So there's four real key stakeholders, and they have the four different hotel lanes. And as you mentioned, Rachel, earlier, in the vacation rental space, you have the owners, you have the property managers, you have the distribution, you don't have the national brands. You might say, okay, well, isn't Vacasa or isn't Casago? But they have all of those properties have very different standards.
I think it's so interesting because it's like in the vacation rental industry, we tend to, and this is like a little bit of my own soapbox. So I'm anyone listening, or all of the millions and billions of listeners, um, this is not like anyone else's opinion on this podcast but mine. So now you guys are like, what is she gonna say? But no. So I feel like it's so interesting that in the hotel industry, there's those four players, right? The person that owns the property management company, the brand, and the distribution channels, right? Those are the four players. And in the vacation rental industry, we really see ourselves that it's the homeowner and the property manager. And I find it so weird, and I've been working as a board member to try and work on this a little. Why are we not considering our distribution channels one of these legs of the stool? Like, when we are so negative sometimes about VRBO and Airbnb. And I'm not saying that things that are distribution channels, like including booking.com and whatever, that that these channels are perfect or that they do everything right. I'm not saying that they don't make mistakes, like they do, and I'm not saying they don't annoy me, but I am saying they are very important to our industry, and I find it weird how we, as most property management companies, most vacation rental company owners, have really sort of put their guard up, put a shield up, and not allowed our major distribution channel partners to be considered such an important part. Like, if we were able to play in a sandbox, even the 3 of us, property owners, property managers, and our distribution channels, like, how amazing would that be towards going towards standardization and for people being able to have trust towards the product that they're gonna get when they go and stay in a vacation rental, and also this concept of brands, which I do think is sort of coming around the mountain a little bit when you talk about some of these franchise concepts that are coming up like Grand Welcome and Casago. And I'm not sure that those are going to work. And I don't know that those are the best way to do it, but it's like some step in that direction. And I just think it's really interesting that when you look at the hotels, and I'm not saying that vacation rentals have to emulate exactly what hotels have done, but I would say they've been around for a long time. I am sure that in their process, they have tried and failed and thrown all the spaghetti at the wall, like the vacation rental industry has. And they have ended up in a situation where there's those 4 components, right? And I'm just going to repeat myself because I love doing that. That there's the owner of the hotel, the property management company that runs the hotel, the brand that we all know, and then these distribution channels. And those are considered the 4 parts to the industry. And how in vacation rentals currently we're still operating with this concept that we have 2 legs on our stool, and it's just the property owner and the manager. And isn't that interesting? And like, what would happen if that were to shift? And would that help us get towards a place where people would have more sense of security and safety when booking in a vacation rental? And would that come from standardization? All those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting over, over history. If you look back over the last 30, 40 years, when back in like the early or late 1980s, about half the hotels in the US were independents and the other half were branded hotels. But as these standards launched, now over 70% of the US supply is in branded. And so what these standards bring are certainty to the guest experience, and guests want certainty. And so I agree that there's the, the I trips to the world and the grand welcomes to the world, but wouldn't it be amazing if they could standardize service and quality so that as a guest goes and travel? Because I don't think we're going to get there until a guest can feel certain that when they book a grand welcome in Milwaukee to, the Outer Banks, they're going to get a similar experience.
Right.
So I don't think that's going to happen until we really, institute these standards like the hotels do. Like you cannot hang a Marriott flag on your building if you're not buying to spec the
Right.
pillows, mattress, the sheets. And so will we do that? I don't know if these brands are going to really become a household name.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna ask you, like, what percentage of you thinks that the reason these national brands haven't worked out is because of lack of standardization?
You mean in vacation rentals?
Mhm.
Oh, well, yeah, definitely. That's one of the various reasons. I mean, I also think you just can't. The local operators are just so key to delivering hospitality, and like when you try to manage 40,000 homes, it just becomes way too much. Just like the hotels can't manage. If you look at those property managers, they really can't
Right,
manage
300.
300
Yeah.
without your service levels just decline significantly, and you start to churn. You take on too many bad eggs, bad properties and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so that really risks the brand reputation.
Well, it's like we've seen with Vacasa that the idea that you could utilize tech to standardize an experience, whether it's through distribution or booking or guest experience, or through like running your business and utilizing tech, like, that didn't really work. Right. And I do think it's cool that, and I don't know, is it Casago or Casago? Is there a right way or a wrong way?
The Sago.
Casago. Okay.
I've always
Yeah.
said Costco,
Me
so
too. You
joke's
guys.
on me.
Maybe we should do like, oh my God, we should totally do a poll on LinkedIn about this because like it's so timely because to everyone that hears this, like yesterday was the day, or was it today? Was it yesterday that it became official that Casago purchased officially Vacasa, or that they have whatever that is. And so we could do like a poll to be like, do you say it like Casago or Casago? But I feel like someone did a poll about that already. But
I
anyway,
always thought because casa is one color and
samesies,
go is
samesies.
one
Yeah.
color.
Yeah, well, and because they started in Mexico. But okay, wait, we digress.
Yeah.
So okay, but it's like so Vacasa, like they came out with this standardization through tech. Okay, that didn't work, right? And then now we're looking at this next iteration of companies like Grand Welcome and Casago Casago and like iTrips or whoever, not iTrips, V-Trips, or whoever is now, you know, and I guess you could sort of consider like Nocturne, or maybe even Away Day, like some of these companies where they're doing more like roll-ups, and they're looking at consolidation and sort of standardization through investment, and maybe through like efficiencies in the teams or the tech, right? Which I feel like that's the way, those are some of these models now where people are saying they're creating some consistency sort of in the brands, and it's through the technology that's being used, maybe through consolidation, working with teams and efficiencies. But what we're not seeing yet is standardization, within the homes. And I know as a property manager, as a vacation rental company owner, the concept of being able to, like, when someone tells me, okay, this happened in Jackson actually, and I hope I don't get in trouble for talking about it, but Megan, you might know about it, and I'm trying to remember the name of the development. It was a development, something Springs, maybe, there was an older gentleman that bought some big part of this development that was already done, and they were trying to bring someone in to be the property manager, and they were talking about how this guy that owns some of the development, but he didn't own the majority of the homes, and he was telling Rob and I that what his plan was to get these other homeowners that already had owned their properties for years to standardize their finish, like to get them to remodel their homes to a certain standard. And that then they were going to have this great community they would be able to market at a higher level because, the guests would have a really nice sense of comfort in knowing what they were getting. And I remember Rob and I just laughing and thinking this was the biggest joke, that he was going to tell these homeowners that owned their multi-million dollar homes that they have to remodel their home to his standard, and then he would be, allowing them to market within his program. We were like, that's never going to happen. And so I think when it comes to standardizing, like within the home, that's the fear from vacation rental and property management people, is like, well, there's no way I can get a homeowner to agree to standardize their home. This is their piece of property. Why do they care what I think? Right. But I think this unique idea of being able to standardize the experience in the kitchen, bedroom, and bathroom, like that's interesting, because that's not saying remodel your living room. You know what I mean? That's not saying add 3 more bedrooms. I just think that's really interesting, and it really does strike a chord with me with my hotel experience today, because it's like the way that this hotel is located next to a mall. I was about to have a fight, not a physical fight, but like an argument with my husband in the Uber that was dropping us off. And for real, like I was like, "Are you joking? We booked a hotel next to a mall. Like, oh my god, are we like in the mall? What's going on?" And then when we walked in the lobby, it was kind of like, "This is sterile. This is like there's marble on the floor, but like it's steamy in here and it's a little musty," And so it was like, but once we got to the room, right? And there's all the things I talked about earlier, there is this sense for me that it's like, I'm okay. Like we're going to be okay, because there's these things that are going to be taking place, which are the most important parts. Like the bed that we're going to sleep on is, to a standard. The bathroom has certain amenities, that there's certain kinds of coffee and stuff. And I think that that's just a really interesting reality that I think a lot of us, most of us, maybe all of us in our industry haven't thought about.
Mhm.
And that it,
Yeah, I think
for me, it like makes it possible that maybe we could standardize
Mhm.
if we
because
think it differently.
yeah, when we're talking about the bed, bath, and kitchen, those are things that are consumables, right? You're having to replace sheets, you're having to replace towels, you're having to replace coffee makers and glasses and whatnot. So it's not like it's like, let's go and remodel and have different couches or, TVs or whatever, things that um, you're automatically replenishing. And I think it's really important to start thinking about like, how do you standardize the products in the home from the comfort of the stay, so bed, bath, and kitchen, and then the service levels. This is another area that's I think, when we talk about hotels and the history of hotels and our hotel experience today, we believe at Inhaven that the number one differentiator between an economy level hotel and a luxury hotel is the number of service staff in the lobby. So when you show up at a Best Western, you might see one person front of house. When you show up at a Courtyard, maybe 2, 3. Marriott, you'll have probably 5, 6. And then, at a Ritz-Carlton, you should have 8 or 9. There's someone there to push the elevator button for you. I mean, there's you there c you just you can't you won't they won't allow you to do anything, right? Enjoy your experience. And so as we think about we've got the standardization on the product side of the things, but then how do you standardize the service levels,
The people to property
the
ratio.
people to property ratio? So can you talk a
So
little bit about
smart.
that, Megan?
Yeah, so the first time I ever heard about it actually was working for 360 Blue 10 years ago. And we had a very strict 4 properties for every 1 employee, or 1 employee for every 4 properties ratio. So every time we added another 4 properties, we hired someone. And this was something that we used in all of our marketing materials and was really this source of pride. And one allowed us to charge higher commission percentage than our competitors, which is really helpful because you can monetize it. Granted, your staffing costs are of course more expensive than those who have a lower or a higher property to people ratio. And it allowed us to ensure that we provided the highest level of service that was really like this our brand and the whole reason that we existed as this company. And it's really, really interesting. I have seen firsthand that those companies with the higher property to people ratio, you have to charge a lower commission percentage. Although you are saving money on staffing costs, the churn of your properties is a lot higher. Those owner expectations may not align with what you are physically able to provide in terms of service. And it's interesting because I think as an industry, we have really struggled to label ourselves as mid-tier or luxury, right? Like most property managers that you talk to would consider themselves higher end. And I think that that level of service and the number of staff members that you have is what really defines you as luxury or economy or somewhere in the middle.
So true.
That a hot take?
No, yes. Yes, it's a hot take. Not no. I mean, it's like that. I mean, again, and I feel like I'm just like always so dramatic, and I guess this is just who I am. But also, like to me, it feels so dramatic because to me, it just, I mean, I feel like this a lot when I talk with people in our industry, and I know I always say the same thing, but it's like because I spent so many years not having these conversations and not having context to talk about it with, and then being able to talk about this in this way is like, oh, but yeah, like, that is so spot on, Megan, because and it's putting it in a way I think that, we all sort of know inside of us, but maybe we just don't hear explained enough, and so that when someone lays it out, you're just like, "Okay, that's it." And there's somewhere in my brain or, like, in my soul, I knew that, but I've wondered, like, for instance, I'm in a, mastermind group, which is, like, this amazing group of women that are all, like, owning, property management, vacation rental company people. But one of the people in the group who I love and I totally respect made a comment a couple of meetings ago, and she said something like, for her company, and so I'm just like, now I'm speaking as her, not as myself, right? But she was saying something like, at my company, we've just decided we are not going to be available after 5 PM. Like, and we won't be available on Sundays. And, we're going to be able to write back to people. If they don't have an emergency, we're going to write to them and we're going to make a commitment to ourselves just to write to them and say, hey, we will get back to you in the morning. And, not be trying to fix every single thing and be everything to everyone, because that's not who we are as a company. And we're, we don't have those kind of price points. And so this is what we're deciding in order to make our company be able to stay alive and for our team be able to not burn out and all of that. And so to me, that was like almost when she was talking about that, I took it almost like personally, right? Because I feel the opposite with my company. But then again, at Abode, we have much higher price points than she does. And, so we have more money that we can make, which we use to have more people on staff, which we use to make sure that we can be available 24/7, that we can respond to people quickly, and that we would actually have a rule where we say we would never tell someone they have to wait till the morning. That's like a rule. We would never. And so, but I think neither one of those is better than the other. But what would make that work nicely for once, and what would make it make sense for her company to be able to say, we're really good at what we do and we're offering an amazing service for the price point and all of that, and make that really true, is if there were standards that you could work towards so that it wasn't just arbitrary and it's not just someone's opinion of like what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, right? Because I think when it's more arbitrary like that, it puts so much unnecessary pressure on the property management companies because maybe if you don't have higher price points and you don't have that revenue coming into your company and you can't support 24/7 response time, that, maybe you're just going to drive yourself into the ground over time. And what if that number of staff per guest or per house or whatever it is would allow companies to be able to let guests know what they can expect when it comes to Bed Bath and Kitchen, but also service levels, so that when they are paying a higher price point and, people are adhering to these standards, so-called standards that might happen one day, that they would know what kind of service they can get for that. And they wouldn't, I think it would help guests to be more fulfilled and happy in their stay because they're not going to have expectations that can't be met.
Yeah, I think those response times are key. I was just at for VR Nation, as I was mentioning, I went to this Marriott Homes and Villas session where they were saying that to become a Marriott Homes and Villa property, you need to respond to a guest within 2 hours. And they actually had stricter
Yeah.
time frames with the
2 hours
vacation,
is
like
long.
could not right. And so I think about myself as a guest in a hotel, if like my, um, you know, light is out or Wi-Fi is not working, I would be so frustrated if it took 2 hours for someone to pick up the phone and call me back. So I think it's a great way of saying, just to your point, Rachel, like there is a quality framework and here's what you can expect from the level of service and the response times. I just got a call right before we got on this call from Mark at Abode because I'm staying at Abode on Monday.
Oh, yeah.
The guy, and he's like, "How can I help you? How can I make sure that you have a great experience here?" And it was like the nicest call that I've ever received, that I've received. And that's wow, that is top-notch service levels. Like someone that's like, "How can I make you more comfortable while you're here?" And that should be somehow communicated along this quality framework. That's the type of service you're going to get when you're staying in a Abode property versus, this other woman's property.
But also, like, her properties are great, and I think to me, the point is, if her properties are a lesser price point, and let's say she was, established at a certain standard, like a level, and I don't know what the levels would be called, but whatever this level would be, and if that level, then, it's clear that there's this many people per guest or per house or whatever, then to me, it's like when I go to a Hampton Inn, I'm not demanding room service. I'm not
Right.
demanding if I call the front
Exactly.
desk and no one answers, I'm really not that mad because I'm like, it's a Hampton Inn. I should just go down there and see if they're there. Like that's just how it goes. If I booked a stay upcoming at a Hampton Inn and I'm calling about to ask a question and no one answers, I'm like, yeah, I probably have to like leave a message, whatever. That's what you expect. But if I'm staying at the Ritz, and, like, I'm gonna have a totally different expectation of how I should be responded to, and so I think that's the gift is, like, not only is this a gift for people that are looking for a certain high standard of service, that they should be able to know what they're gonna get, but there's also people that would like to pay a more mid-range price point or even a value price point, and then I think it's really helpful to the vacation rental company and to the guest to know what you're getting for that, so that that person who spends $200 a night isn't freaking out that they don't have 24/7 availability. Like, no, you just like if you went to the Hampton, you wouldn't have that either, and you'd be okay with it. And I think that it helps like the whole ecosystem to have the understanding around all of it. And that's what we don't have in our industry. And I think that is what sometimes probably leads to some bad reviews and some whining online about people saying, vacation rentals don't have the level of service that I can count on in hotels. And it's like, well, that's because we don't have standards to adhere to. And so we're all sort of grasping at straws at what we should be doing. And if we
I
had
Yes.
think a lot of it is because we've been unwilling to be honest about the level of service that we truly are providing.
Right. So you need to
or
be transparent for sure.
you just
And I
don't
think
know because you're
yeah,
comparing
it's
against nothing.
you're comparing against something, you have no idea what you're walking into. So I think to kind of like put a bow on this discussion, what the hotel industry has done over the last 40 years is they developed this quality framework in terms of service and product quality to deliver certainty. So a guest knows what they're going to get and what they're paying for when they walk into a Best Western versus a Ritz Carlton. And that is exactly the opportunity here for the vacation rental industry.
I totally see it. I mean, I know I'm always saying that I'm having my mind blown, but I really do feel like that again in this discussion and on this topic because it's just we've all been going round and round for so long, and I've always just thought there was no way out of this conversation, that we would talk about it forever, and that, and to think that there may be a light at the end of the tunnel is like, "Oh, there could actually be a way where we could have some sort of standardized levels that people could actually hope to adhere to at any level. Like, so it's not like we all have to get to the top, but like we can, get in where we fit in, and that our homeowners and our guests would have so much more comfort based on knowing those, and we would have comfort knowing that we can, actually achieve and not just be constantly striving towards like this peak that you can never get to. That's how it feels, when you don't have a standard to get to, it's just always the next thing. And then we need more people, and we need more service, and we need more quicker response time, and we have to, and there's no end to it. And so it would be so wonderful to know that you could shoot towards an actual non-moving target.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great.
I
don't
love
know.
this talk. Thank you so much, Ashley, for the education.
Yes. Yeah, I feel
Thank
like anyone
thanks for chat.
anyone listening needs to hound Ashley for her she has is this normal? Can I actually say this, that people could ask you for,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, you should ask her for a conversation. Like, call her and ask her for some time for her to explain it to you, or Meaghan. I bet they both know it really well. And Ashley does have this like presentation with some slides that I find, like, I could look at that. I know this sounds so dumb, but I think if you own a company like I do, you probably agree. If you were to see her presentation, you would just be like, oh my gosh, you want to refer back to it a lot. But like, if you're not too shy, like I'm obviously painfully shy, just kidding. But like, I know some people might just not call up a stranger and ask them to explain topics. But if you aren't shy, you should call Ashley and Meaghan, and you should ask them to explain this stuff to you. And if you are shy, then you should, let's see, Ashley, are you gonna, you're going to be talking about this at Executive Summit coming up, right? So Ashley's going to have some time at Executive Summit where she'll have a room, and there'll be some time, excuse me, available where she can, she'll be talking to people at Exec Summit about this topic of standardization and the history of hotels, and how it all relates to the vacation rental industry. And then I think, did you say that you may be presenting on this exact topic also at International or / VRMA Vegas 25?
Would love to.
Okay, because I thought
in.
I emailed you about this. Did I?
No,
Oh
no,
no,
I did. I submitted my proposal, but we find
Okay.
out in a
pretty
few
sure
months.
that's gonna make it. I don't know, but because I do think like this topic anyway. If people are listening and you want to hear more, I'm pretty sure there's going to be discussion of this topic at Executive Summit, and also at VRMA Vegas 25 / VRMA International, if you're using the old lingo. And then Meaghan and Ashley are available. They're both on LinkedIn too, and so I feel like for people listening, if you are hearing this conversation and you're like me and you just can't get enough, you could also just chat on LinkedIn. It's so much easier. And then
and precursor to a study that we're doing right now. Meaghan and I are working on it right now, just on the rise and fall of the CASA as it relates to Ambridge and the hotel industry. There's a lot of parallels. So definitely check out. There's going to be more data, more information that's going to be shared at these summits coming up.
I love the idea that there's reporting on this that you're doing. That's not just like what most reporting about the CASA or the CASAGO, buyout or whatever, that it's more like opinions and people saying why it's good or why it's bad. But I love the idea of looking at our current landscape in vacation rentals and the changes that are happening with consolidation and, franchising and whatever, and relating that and not judging it, right? Not being like, this is good or this is bad, or I think I'm smarter or less, but more it's just like, hey, let's look at this current landscape, compare it to historically what we've seen in hotels. To me, that has become like so much more impactful and helpful to me as a business owner. And for me, being able to talk to other business owners and other people in our industry, like in an educated way, because I don't have an opinion on what's good or bad, because I don't think I know that. But I do love the idea of learning about something else that happened in another industry and how I can relate that to what happens with ours. So
how you learn, continue learning and growing. Yep.
I just think that's such a more helpful, healthy, and like kind way to look at what's happening in our industry versus, the non-therapy version of like, just being mad about it and angry and like, stating opinions. So yeah, but I'm not trying to say anything bad about anyone. I'm just saying I find that more helpful. Okay. I'll shut up. Okay. Do we want to bring up, oh yes.
Next week's topic is also a mystery. Surprise.
Oh, surprise topic next week. Yes.
But
my favorite.
Rachel will be in person together.
Wait, no.
On Breakroom.
Oh, yeah, we will. Oh my gosh.
I think you're back in time. I don't leave till Thursday. So
Okay. Oh, yeah. Thursday. Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Amazing.
Okay.
We'll see. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. All right. Well, thanks to everyone who's listening. And I feel like I talked way too much this episode, so I'm sorry if my voice is grating on your nerves. And hopefully next time I will shut the mouth. And next time when we talk, it will be a mystery topic. So if you would like to write us on LinkedIn or on Instagram or whatever, and give us your preferences on what you think the topic should be. I'm not saying we're going to do the topic that you bring up, but I am saying we'll think about it. And so you could do that. Otherwise, I guess we'll see you next time on Certainty Served Weekly with Inhaven on the Hospitality Breakroom. Thanks so much for listening.